You just spent 40 minutes explaining the psychological mechanism behind a concept most people have never heard of. You cited the right researchers. You remembered the year the study was published. You recalled a specific detail from a paper you read 18 months ago. And then you walked out of the house without your keys again. This isn't a contradiction. It isn't selective laziness or convenient forgetfulness. It's one of the most consistent and least understood patterns in cognitive psychology. And once you see it clearly, it stops feeling like a flaw and starts feeling like exactly what it is: a direct consequence of how a highly active mind actually works. Your brain does not file everything equally. It never has. Every piece of information that enters your mind goes through an invisible sorting process. And the sorting criteria are not importance, not urgency, not how much you need the information later. The criteria are meaning, connection, and emotional weight. Things that attach to something already in your mental architecture get stored richly. Things that float in without hooks, names, dates, passwords, where you put the keys, get processed at the surface and forgotten almost immediately. Psychologists call this the depth of processing effect, first demonstrated by Craik and Lockhart in 1972. The deeper you process information, the more you connect it, question it, turn it over, the stronger the memory trace. The more shallow the processing, the more mechanical and arbitrary the information, the weaker the trace. And here's where intelligence becomes a double-edged thing. Highly intelligent minds are associative processors by default. They do not encounter a piece of information and file it in isolation. They immediately begin connecting it to existing knowledge, to patterns, to implications, to questions the information raises. This is what makes them exceptional at complex thinking. It is also precisely what makes them terrible at remembering where they left their phone. Simple information doesn't need that architecture. It doesn't ask to be connected or questioned. It just needs to be placed, mechanically, shallowly, without meaning. And a mind that is wired for depth finds shallow placement almost impossible to execute. Not because it can't, but because it immediately tries to do more than the task requires. The phone gets put down while the brain is already 3 steps ahead, processing something else entirely. This is what the research on absent-mindedness actually shows. In 2006, cognitive psychologists at Harvard identified absent-mindedness not as a memory failure, but as an attention allocation failure. The information never got encoded properly, not because the brain lacked capacity, but because the brain was already occupied with something it found more worthy of processing. You didn't forget where you put the keys. You never fully registered it in the first place. Your attention had already moved on. There is a specific type of information that causes the most consistent problems for highly active minds: semantic labels, names, dates, addresses, passwords, facts stripped of context. These are what psychologists call arbitrary associations. Sounds or symbols assigned to things without any intrinsic connection between the label and what it represents. The name Thursday tells you nothing about what Thursday is. The name Kevin tells you nothing about Kevin. Without a natural hook, an associative mind has nowhere to anchor the label. It floats and falls. Albert Einstein famously refused to memorize his own phone number. When asked why, his answer was immediate. There was no point in filling his mind with information he could look up. What he was describing, without using the language of cognitive science, was a deliberate prioritization of processing capacity. He understood intuitively that the same cognitive resources he used to develop the theory of relativity were the ones that would be wasted on memorizing a string of digits. This is the uncomfortable paradox at the center of high intelligence and forgetfulness. The same architecture that allows for deep pattern recognition, rapid connection of disparate ideas, and sophisticated abstract reasoning, that same architecture is actively unhelpful when the task is mechanical and arbitrary. The brain that builds cathedrals struggles to hang a picture straight. The other factor is cognitive load. Highly intelligent people tend to carry more active processing at any given moment. More threads running simultaneously, more open questions, more background analysis. Working memory, the short-term holding space that registers where you put your keys, has a fixed capacity. When it is occupied by complex ongoing thought, there is less room for the simple and mundane. The keys land somewhere while your mind is already elsewhere. The information never got its moment of registration. This is not forgetfulness. Forgetfulness implies the information was stored and then lost. What happens here is different. The information was never fully stored to begin with, not because it wasn't important, but because importance was not the brain's filing criterion in that moment. The minds that remember everything about a person, the way they laughed, what they said, the look on their face when something moved them, and forget their name by the next morning, are not damaged. They are operating at full capacity on the things they were built to process. The name was a label. Everything else was a story. And an associative mind will always choose the story. You are not losing your mind. Your mind is just very, very full of everything that isn't the keys. Tell me, what's the most impressive thing you remember effortlessly, and what embarrassingly simple thing do you forget constantly? And if you want to understand the full architecture of how your memory actually works, the next video is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about it. Click it.